Hey everyone, welcome back to AI Insights. I'm your host for today, Fleur Prince, together here with my co-host Gráinne.
Hi guys.
What up?
Yeah. So it's been a busy week. It has been a busy week in like every way. So
Mm-hmm.
we were discussing off call, kind of just like things that we had heard colloquially. And I was sharing that over here in Ireland, it has become kind of, a new argument or rather a new defense in criminal law that if there's a recorded video of you doing something, people are now saying, "How do you know it's not AI?" and raising that as an argument to the court. And especially because over here in Ireland, we received like, for example, Sora, when Sora was first released, we got that
Mm-hmm.
a lot later. Like, I remember my mom sending me a Sora link because she's in Miami, and I couldn't open it because I was in Ireland, and it was like region restricted or not available in your region. So, the fact that this argument is evolving, kind of contrasts with the fact that we have judges that don't necessarily have experience or understanding of AI videos, what an AI video, kind of is, how to spot one, it's etc.
Yeah,
So it's
what
just
it entails.
yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic that I wanted to share.
No, true, but also it forces people, actually the government then, or the prosecutor has to figure out, indeed, was it AI generated, buying the defense a bit more time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like even if, the judge doesn't buy it, it still is another consideration that's weighted because it's innocent until proven guilty, you
Yep.
know? So
It's not
any
guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, so any form of kind of complication in that matrix or like a additional
Mm-hmm.
argument within that matrix is going to make a difference. So it's just something interesting that I thought I would flag, and we'll definitely probably be seeing this in criminal jurisdictions across the world as, video generation continues advancing.
No, exactly. And also, this is actually a good point as well. So, I don't know if others have recently noticed this when they go to the cinema, but if you look at the end credits, I'm always a person that stays for the end credits because I always hope for a bonus scene. But it now also has entailed in the end credits. This movie was not generated with AI to prove that it was made with by people.
Yeah,
How
which
crazy is
is
that you have to include that?
yeah, and then also, like, that's in the Netherlands, do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's in
Mhm.
the Netherlands, I wonder if it's showing that in the United States, like, because the Netherlands has regulations on that, and then, it remains to be seen, like, how Hollywood will change. I mean, AI is such a big part of entertainment now, like, the fruit
Mhm.
videos and everything, like, that's an entire branch of entertainment for people, like, watching, like, these, like, AI, constructed narratives, etc. Like it's its own genre now, as well as being, like a tool. So yeah, a tool in other productions that are not, primarily AI based. But anyway, so that is our introduction. Those are some things that we heard and wanted to bring to you guys this week. And we're now going to get to our episode's main theme, which is deployment. So, we're seeing AI everywhere. We're seeing it in criminal trials. We're seeing it in movie theaters. And we're also, most pertinently, seeing it in our companies. And this involves deployment. This involves an acquisition
Mhm.
process. This involves, people acquiring the technology. However, a lot of AI pilots do fail, and the ones that don't share a lot of common disciplines. And we're going to discuss that today.
No, exactly. I mean, we've seen the failure rate in a lot of companies actually end up like, well, actually, let's talk about the enterprise AI projects. They actually have been failing for like 80 to 95% to deliver like meaningful return of investments and never even make it to production, which is weird considering how much money has been
Yeah.
invested into it. But also, like Rand Corporation, for example, puts it at over 80%, double the failure rate on the traditional IT projects. I mean, even MIT research suggests that 95% of Gen AI pilots fail to reach production, which is, for me, that's actually a lot.
Yeah. No, I think for anybody that's a lot. I mean, especially just given, in the US and London, we're seeing these mass layoffs in favor of AI,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my God. Did you see by Oracle, by the way? They laid off 30,000 people.
I did see that. And what's crazy is I didn't even see that from, I don't know, like just general news. I saw that from people that were laid off on LinkedIn. Explaining, hey, like I'm in this position. Like it's ridiculous, like the scale at which it's kind of gotten to, where, we see kind of AI nearly like replacing functions.
No, but also like Oracle explained that the reason why they laid off 30% of 1,000 people was because they wanted to invest more into AI data centers.
What? So not even like well, that's the thing, right? Like a lot of people kind of, there's the discussion, will AI take my job? I don't think AI will take your job. I think that AI does supplement workflows. I mean, I see that in law, especially, there has to be a
Hmm.
person to sign off, but I think that companies reprioritizing and wanting to amass like either A, wanting to use it as an excuse to cut costs, or like wanting to amass more kind of like critical infrastructure. You know what I mean? Like the data centers.
Hmm.
I think those types of leadership decisions are what caused the job cuts, but maybe not necessarily just like implementation of like AI pilots into everyday life because pilots don't replace people, they enhance productivity and they kind of, yeah, it's a supplement. I don't think it's a replacement, especially because, kind of approaching it from a compliance standpoint.
Hmm.
You need sign off. You need sign off. You need a person that's making decisions as well. It's against there's a lot of, regulations on, purely AI constructed work. The same way that, when you see the work of a cinematographer in a film, or rather you're seeing a film and it's a cinematographer, like they have to sign off, this was constructed with AI, the transparency. Anyway, so sorry. That's just my little kind of how I feel about that because I've been thinking about it throughout the week.
No,
But
true, but also like companies are rushing now to deploy because of the competitive pressure because of board mandates. It's not per se because everyone's like, we should do this. It's also because from the board, they're saying, oh, we have to do something with AI.
yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, and it's just not handled kind of appropriately.
No, and a lot of people also like, because we were talking earlier about indeed the failure rate, which is now at 95% almost, according to MIT.
Mhm,
A lot ends up being blamed on the AI model. Like it
mhm.
hallucinated, it wasn't accurate enough, or it wasn't ready. But the data actually tells a different story if you look more into it. I don't know if you saw this, but for example, it's actually because like most enterprises have their data scattered across like dozen disconnected systems.
Mhm.
Know how AI models work. So they're only good as the data they're trained on or grounded on. But
Yeah.
also, if your CRM system isn't connected to your ERP, it
Mhm.
doesn't work.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I can kind of, connect that to things that are going on within my work. So, in order for the AI to work and in order to like avoid bottlenecks, you need to grant
Mhm.
it access to the documents that you're working with, because otherwise it just becomes like a clunky third step as opposed to something that's integrated and actually helping you save time. You have to link it to databases like iManage. You have to ensure that it kind of has like a background of like your capabilities, like a .md file. I actually did a post about this on our LinkedIn this week, which is that you're able to kind of take Claude Cowork. You can skip constantly
Mhm.
reiterating of like, I'm this, I'm seeking to do this by having an MD file uploaded. What is an MD file? A .md file is just kind of a description of like who you are, what you want the prompt outcome to be, the usual kind of, prioritize like time over speed and just kind of those different quality controls. And it can save a lot of time. But yeah, I think it's essential to kind of be using it in the correct way. But before you can even use it in the correct way, it needs to be linked to the proper kind of tools in order to give you the outcome that you want. It's the
Uh,
same thing as a person. You don't have somebody new starting in a job and, you don't tell them what you want and then act shocked when they're not able to deliver.
no,
I
true. And
mean
we're also talking here about integration debt as well. I mean, you know about legacy systems, right?
about
They've
what?
been legacy systems. So systems that have been used for years
Yeah.
suddenly
Oh,
have to
yeah.
like start working with AI software. And
Mhm.
you're like trying to patch everything together, get teams that have been siloed for
Yeah.
years to connect stuff.
Mhm.
I think that isolation is also what's like causing these massive failures.
Yeah.
But also the IBM research as well. Like it shows only 51% of the organizations can confidently evaluate whether their AI is working or not, which is very low in my personal opinion.
Well, now we can kind of look at, the development that's occurred because of these numbers and kind of the other side of the
Hmm.
coin, which is multi-agent systems, So you're saying these things aren't synced, they don't have the same capacity. Well, what solves that multi-agent systems? I mean, I was experimenting with Claude Code this week, and the way that
Hmm.
it just has control, it has access to everything. Everything that you would like hypothetically imagine that you would want an AI system to do. Like say you're on like ChatGPT, it's just what's in your head that you're giving it. Your computer is your life. Like, that's more than than what's in your head currently. It's everything. And when you kind of give an AI model that type of power, I mean, obviously a lot of data concerns, but independently of that, its use kind of like quadruple. So, okay, for example, how many texts have I forgotten to respond to? Claude Code can answer that because your iMessage is synced on a MacBook. So it just kind of really enhances it really, you don't have to automatically, or sorry, rather, you don't have to manually do a lot of things. It's automatically kind of transferred. So yeah.
No, true, but also, I love, by the way, that we're not going over the solution we're first talking about. That's a huge problem, but there is a
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah.
Multi-agent, getting a multi-agent into your company.
Mhm.
But I think what's cool about it is indeed you see, instead of like one generous employee doing everything, you have a legal agent, a data agent, a customer service agent, and an orchestra that routes tasks between them. I mean, Microsoft, Google, and Salesforce are building these kind of systems now.
Yeah.
So where it's all getting more integrated. But the challenge is that most enterprises are still buying like single model tools. I mean, we're talking about like Chat GPT plugin, a Copilot here,
Mhm.
without really thinking about okay, how to connect them. And that's what I really love about this multi-agent architecture structure. It's changing all of that. Instead of like buying one tool, just have everything connected to each other.
And I mean, that's the thing, right? Like you can manually sync kind of all of this stuff. Like this problem with like syncing and you're not using the AI model correctly, whatever. Like that, there's a lot of technical solutions. So
Hmm.
coding it a specific way or coding your own model, and then B, just manually linking everything, but kind of the shift to agentic solves for all of that. And for the majority of people that are non-technical, that represents a huge advancement in what AI pilots can actually do. For example, like I wanted to evaluate, like, a timeline of a bunch of emails, and I wanted to up AI and then just get
Hmm.
kind of everything, but I tried to upload it and it wasn't able to read the file because I condensed, like, it was too many emails, so I had to, like, condense it to, like, an Excel sheet, but then it didn't wanna read the Excel sheet, it said it was too big, and then I changed it, like, kinda reduced it, but then it was, like, still too many emails. If I was using Claude Code for that, it would've been instantaneous, and I wouldn't have had wasted all that time, going, "Okay, like, I can still make this work if I reduce the file, if I do this, if I go this different way," if I change the data into this format,
No,
and I can
exactly. Just to
leave
make
all the
the
time.
AI tool work for you.
Yeah, you're doing
True.
more work to make it work
Yeah.
for you. I don't have that time.
No, true. But also, like looking at this discussion that we're having now, do you think it's realistic also like for smaller organizations, or is it more of a big enterprise only shift right now?
I think that smaller organizations, it would be more difficult. I think it just depends on the stratification of the organization. Like, for example, if there's even like one person that's technical within
Hmm.
the organization, I mean, they can download Claude Code and, show someone how to use it and help them. But you're not gonna be able to have like a built from scratch branded tool, like with all of the different compliance hierarchies in place. Another thing is if you are a bigger organization, the compliance, kind of compounds. You have so much more that you need to be able to represent, like not only internally, there needs to be internal policies, obviously, but there also needs to be like robust external policies, transparency. There needs to be like accountability. Like when someone uses AI, you need to have a paper trail for that you are able to send in a report. So there's AI literacy requirements. So, people within
Hmm.
your organization are going to have to meet AI literacy requirements. There's even like, for example, law firms, there needs to be like a degree of awareness of, okay, like a human is required to approve blank, blank, and blank. Article 22 of the GDPR Act actually says that you cannot have an automated output cannot have a legal outcome. So basically, you have to have an individual that signs off on something. All of these considerations must be, accounted for within a larger organization, also within a smaller one, but like the penalties are not as high, the expectations are not, there in such a severe way. What the standard that Google is held to is going to be vastly different from like a coffee shop down the road in my small town where they have an AI generated, I don't know, art piece, or they're using AI generated marketing or automated marketing, automated business development where there's outreach. If Google, on the other hand, is doing like fully automated outreach, customer service, etc., there's a lot more consideration.
No, true. I was more looking also like at how startups might be
Hmm.
starting to use this because indeed you can now start. I think Lovable is still a good example of
Hmm.
seeing where you see like people creating huge companies where it's only like maybe a two-person team,
Hmm.
thanks to their multi-agent system actually helping up these small entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I do think it might be beneficial for them, even for small organizations, to invest in this. But indeed, what you said, the bigger you grow, the more compliance you have to adhere to. Also because you
Yeah.
become more regulated.
And another thing is it can kind of help on like it's going to help no matter what aspect of growth that you're on, or rather like no matter what size the company is, it's going to assist you. Like for example, like I can use AI when I'm operating within the capacity of like my 500 person law firm, or I can use AI when I'm operating in the capacity of this podcast, which is two people. So, and our team of AI agents, two
Yeah,
people in our
two
team of
people
AI.
and our multiple AI agents that are helping us run this podcast, marketing, promotion,
Yeah.
and
Well,
everything else.
we need to do an episode on that. We'll probably do it next week, so
Yeah,
stay
no,
tuned.
definitely.
There's some things behind the scenes that we're ready to share. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving onward to our third talking point. So we want to discuss a little bit, we kind of discussed this earlier, but to go into more depth, the measurement gap. So almost 200 billion spent and then not as much tied to revenue. So Goldman Sachs actually estimated that global AI infrastructure's investment would approach 200 billion by 2025. NVIDIA's 2025 revenue alone hit 130 billion, and that's a 114 increase year on year. So obviously, and this is something that we all know, money is flowing towards this sector. Another thing that's really interesting is I actually saw in the United States the one sector that's had like a steady increase in
Mm-hmm.
employment because we have a massive unemployment crisis. I mean, look at Oracle, right? The one job that is continuously adding jobs. Yeah, the one position there's continuously more opportunities is AI. So we're just seeing this robust we're seeing all these flag points, right? Of like economically viable,
Mm-hmm.
like huge thing, etc. I mean, that's why everybody calls it a bubble. However, we're not seeing the same amount of output, and that relates to kind of the pilot struggle that we were discussing earlier.
No, exactly. But you're also looking here at an accountability problem as well. I mean, despite like only 29% of executives can actually measure their AI return of investment. I mean, this is found in the Forbes AI study of 2025. But only like 50% of enterprises are achieving measurable return of investments from AI agents,
Hmm.
which is slightly concerning. I mean, if you think about that, less than 20% of AI infrastructure actually spend is tied to attributable revenue.
Hmm. Yeah, another aspect of that, though, I think, is that we have people that aren't able to it's a difficult thing to capture as well. Kind of the increase, obviously time, but there's more to AI than just automating systems. Yeah, so I think an aspect of it is even it's so new that, you're implementing it, but you don't even
Hmm.
have, clearly defined yardsticks by which to measure, kind of increase. But there is something that, it's something that we can consider, which is the A and B testing shift. So a positive signal is that 40% of enterprises are now using A and B testing AI interventions, up from 15% in 2024. So that's 40 versus 15%. And this discipline now separates people that are actually using it efficiently. So they treat AI like a product, run controlled experiments to understand what's actually working. So this relates back to what I was saying, because it's so new, we don't have the same capacity, or
Hmm.
rather, we don't have the same capacity to measure that we would other kind of, you know,
No, true.
mechanisms in the work phase. However, we're starting to see more measurement now. And then an uncomfortable question is that are companies spending on AI because it works or just because they're afraid of being left behind? As the industry grows and grows, I mean, also an aspect of it is just client pressure. Like clients want to hear that you're using the latest technology, that you're not like wasting time, especially within law, it's the billable hour. So if you're doing something manually that other companies have automated, 5 years ago, then you're going to be left behind. And like you were saying, Fleur, about the executive board, it's the
Yeah.
executive pushing it. Yeah, go on.
No, I wanted to say, I mean, the data suggests actually a lot of it is latter and that the reckoning is actually coming because we're talking about, indeed, when we're talking about the board, they're going to start asking, okay, so where's the return of investment? I think I've already said that a few times. Companies without measurements, frameworks are actually going to struggle and to justify, okay, what's the continued investment? Okay, for example, we've put almost like 200 billion, according to Goldman Sachs, into AI, but what did we get back?
Yeah, where is it?
Where is it? How much did it actually improve our lives?
Yeah, but I mean, kind of the core theme of this episode, though, is that a tool is nothing without using it properly. So,
True.
A and B testing, kind of accountability and people that actually understand what they're working with and train in it. That's an important thing. And another aspect of that is, obviously you need to know what you're working with. You need to have like a plan and kind of, even an education on
Hmm.
the matter to be able to implement it correctly. The AI in and of itself isn't going to do anything. But, going further, the other side of that coin is that from a legal standpoint, the inability to measure AI outcomes is also an accountability gap. So if something
Hmm.
goes wrong, who's responsible when you can't trace the decision chain? And, if there's also even different ways to kind of attract criminality within that. Article 22 of the GDPR Act, again, says that you can't have a legal outcome from an automated process. So but that's far reaching, right? Legal is a very broad word. Say
No,
even
true, but it's better to mention it than not mention it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of different things can have legal outcomes. For example, like even, an application for a visa being rejected, that's a legal
Hmm.
outcome. If you automate that entire process, there's going to be problems. There needs to be sign off and there needs to be accountability. And then, independently of all that, you can't even automate that process without having someone that knows what they're doing when they're implementing the pilot. So, A and B testing. So, with that being said, proceeding to our fourth point, which is another reason why AI pilots are failing. It's something that we want to personally kind of advise on and, provide as an insight to anybody listening. And this is the vendor lock in trap. So, what's happening? Enterprises are signing 5-year platform deals with major AI vendors. So, it's a list of names that you all know: Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, OpenAI, often with significant upfront discounts. So, basically,
That's how they get you.
we kind of see like this conflict, this economic, competition. We've been discussing the Claude versus OpenAI battle, like those two
Hmm.
titans for a while now. And a lot of like a way that people are, kind of being bought into, and rather large companies are being bought into each platform is, just the price and the price point. And, people are getting locked into certain platforms that don't work for them. And it's kind of just basic economics. Like, for example, ChatGPT has different restrictions on its usage, right? So, like, you can only upload so many
Hmm.
photos on a free trial. However, Gemini is unlimited free photos. So, what are people going to prefer when they want to upload multiple photos, Anyway,
No, exactly. But also each model has its different usefulness depending on also which job you have within the company. But also the problem here, what you see is that 94% of IT leaders now fear the vendor lock-in because indeed nearly 3 in 4 enterprises say they're losing their AI vendor would disrupt their core operations because they're
yeah.
locked in.
Yeah, exactly. And here's why it's a trap. Once your data, workflows, and teams are built around one vendor system, switching cost becomes enormous. So once you've given like all of your data to one system, you have it in place. If you want to swap that out, it becomes nearly impossible. And already, we've been discussing like the executive and just how these companies work. If you've invested so much money, you cannot just go to investors, your employees, any
Mhm.
stakeholder, and say, okay, we've just this doesn't work. We're going to switch it tomorrow and we're going to pay another, million euros, depending on the size of the company. The vendor controls pricing, model updates, and feature roadmaps, meaning you're completely at their mercy. So, for example, say you've signed on to something, I don't know, 10 years down the line, everything's going to be autonomous. Say the platform you've signed on to, they will not, they're not going to develop their autonomous capacity unless a lot more money is paid. I mean, then the use cases kind of go out the window. Multi-year contracts are accumulating tech debt, so you're locked into today's architecture even as the technology evolves. Just to put it otherwise, how you can kind of avoid this, so this is kind of our advice, is to avoid proprietary data formats, build on open standards where possible, and treat AI infrastructure like any other critical vendor relationship with exit clauses and portability requirements baked in from day one. This on the exit clauses and portability requirements, and all that is possible through contract. So read your contract and make sure you have a lawyer redlining it.
Exactly, multiple ones as well.
And an AI agent team.
Well, that might actually be a future thing as well. I mean, I've already
Yeah.
hear you've talked about it as well in the past, where law companies are actively using AI to help them read contracts and make sure that
Yeah.
they don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, so sometimes when you send your contract to a lawyer, it's not even a lawyer reading it. It's an AI system. But if they're using a bad AI system, then yeah, I mean, you're getting like a ChatGPT level of kind of.
True, and your contract is all over the internet, including
Yeah, because
all secrets that were in the contract.
yeah, and this is an aspect of data privacy because I don't know if you remember, but if you share a ChatGPT chat link, it became like publicly
Hmm.
indexable. The list goes on and
The
on.
worst nightmare of anyone who was using it for example, writing fan fictions with it.
A lot of people's worst nightmares. I don't think it's limited to that, but that's definitely that's look, people, they need privacy. Important thing. So now moving on to our strategic takeaways. So I'm going to start off with number one, which is fix your data before your model. So integration debt and data fragmentation will kill ROI faster than any model limitation. So this is kind of what we were discussing in the beginning, which is that it's
Mm.
only going to work as well as you can kind of use it.
No, true. But also think about enterprise-wide, not tool by tool. I mean, the winners are building connected multi-agent architectures and not collections of siloed AI tools. I've seen this quite a few times when I have helped companies build their communities. When you're looking at them, they're like, "Oh, we should use Cloud Code for this. We should use some Perplexity for that to do our research." And I'm like, "Okay, either choose one or find a way to connect all of them. You can do it through make.com, NAN, you name it, there's all kind of options to do that. But it's gonna help you in the long run, especially we talked about it earlier.
Hmm.
Otherwise you might end up in a vendor lock-in trap.
Hmm.
And that's the worst thing you could have as a company because that would mean that everything that is working today might not work tomorrow because AI is moving so fast.
Exactly. And then our final point and kind of our outro for this episode is measure ruthlessly and negotiate smartly. So every AI investment should have an attribute, it should have an outcome that you can, clearly measure. And you need to be reading your vendor contract before you sign. All right. So that's it for this episode. And thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah, thanks so much. And especially stick around also for episode 3 next week, where we're going to talk about agentic AI. Agents are arriving in production without the accountability frameworks to govern them.
Yes, and we are
What
also
would you
going to be
tell?
discussing our own venture into AI agents. So we will give you kind of latest tools that we found and what it looks like to use them and how you can actually use them properly. As we've discussed within this
Yeah.
episode, which is that, you want there's steps you need to take to make something work.
No, true. And also, actually, that it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, thank you everyone for listening. Be sure to listen to us here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Also, check out our newsletter on our LinkedIn page that we share every week with a short recap of everything we've discussed. And if you ever need help send us both a DM. We're always available on LinkedIn. We're
Yeah,
happy
or
to send you a checklist with how to get either your community running or what you need to do to get into AI law.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you and goodbye.